They gave us names, but they never changed who we are.
The African living in America is ashamed of Africa.
Say it loud.
Or so-called Negro.
No doubt.
Because his history is presented to him by the enemy.
Bloodline can't reroute.
We are African.
Right
If you're born
now.
on a ship, what would you be? I don't know nothing about Africa, of course.
Stand proud.
When you're born, you don't know nothing about nothing.
Trump still
It's
talking.
only when you learn something about something that you learn something.
Roots too deep.
You know about America.
They rebranded chains, called it culture. Stand borders, then said choose one. If the name don't match the history, then the history get used wrong. They fear unity more than violence. That's why truth gets silenced first.
All right, so today we're talking about what it takes to construct a power base as Black people. And the reason why I wanted to kind of build on this is because what I've noticed here, especially with what's going down with Trump administration and how Black folks and other folks are starting to get a little bit more aware of oppression, people are having a high sense of hopelessness. And I think a lot of that has to do with because when people have taken for granted a long period of the majority of their life, they've taken for granted what it means to have the type of freedoms we have, or we perceive to have in the United States. And when the majority of folks don't feel like they're under oppression every day and feel like they actually can control their ability to not be oppressed to some degree, based on the premise of getting a good education, getting a good job, and economically being able to escape certain types of oppression, then that false sense of security has been kind of like pulled, the rug has been pulled from up under them now. What we're seeing now is an administration that's basically letting it be known that they in control, and they changing the narrative. More and more people now are feeling the heat. And because of that, obviously it affects more Black people in terms of their ability to recognize that, well, if they're doing this to their own folks, what does that really mean about me? What does that really mean about my false sense of security? And thinking that we as a people don't necessarily need to come together as a people, because as an individual, I've been able to navigate in what I call cope through the realms of oppression. Well, because of that, and because of the realization that that false sense of security veil has been lifted, I kind of just wanted us to build on, as Black people, what does it mean to our power? How do we position ourselves in a sense to where we're not going down with the ship as what we have it. So starting that off, I want us to talk about identifying types and levels of power. I would first say, what does it mean to have individual power, family power, and then collective power? And I say that because a lot of us are operating first and foremost as individuals. And I think that's the primary, to me, that's the primary means of what we identify as power. When you talk about the people that don't have, and that's not to dive too far ahead, but when you talk about the people that don't have a foundation as a community, then we tend to feel that if we play the game, so to speak, as an individual, we can facilitate our way through and navigate through these different obstacle courses as it applies to being oppressed. And we talked about this on previous episodes a little bit when we talked about Black excellence. So y'all tell me, what does it mean when to a Black person when they feel like they have individual power?
I guess it means they feel empowered, or the ability to satisfy individual desires. You know, they want to take trips, they want to drive cars, they want to have a house. They're able to meet that immediate gratification of those things that we've been taught are the important things in this world. And I don't know. It's hard for me to relate to people because I don't get it on a lot of levels. But that's about what I would venture to guess at this point. I don't know what it is to be a regular person.
I'm not going to necessarily answer your question, War, but I'm gonna try to put a little more into it so that I'm gonna pull something up right quick so that we can kind of build on it because you're talking about power, and this is one of those things. I'm gonna pull up. I'm gonna let y'all know what I'm pulling up. I'm pulling up a thing called Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yep.
Pulling up right now. Have y'all ever heard of that?
Of course
Eh,
we've heard.
I
But
don't know.
as
Uh,
you pull that up, to me, when I thought about what E said, to me, what E hit on is the power of consumption. Because you're talking about things that you can buy, what you can afford, what you can basically what you can consume. And so what does that mean as a power base? Why would the amount of things that I can consume make me a powerful individual?
and I was gonna go into that after showing this Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because our ideals of anything, even power, is defined to us by our overall society. And unless you've actually taken our time to dig into what power is and what it means to you as an individual and to you as your people, then your definition of power will always be defined by the society. And I think what he was going into is based on the fact that people define making it or success or power as having things. You know, I wouldn't necessarily call that power. Having things does not necessarily equate to power. Having things fulfills another atavistic need in the human being. The human being needs to feel that he or she is accepted and belong to the broader base of human beings. And the quickest way to get status is to have status symbols, things. And that's what I think we're talking about. We're talking about we moved to status and we moved a little bit away from power. Think about this. Let's go back. To me, in order to understand anything that the human being does, you have to ask yourself, what is the biological purpose of this thing? What is the biological purpose of acquiring things, of getting goods? What is the biological? Because it's there. Nothing. The things that are being manipulated against us are usually natural parts of our nature, the natural parts of who we are as people. And those who manipulate those things against us to our detriment just simply study who we are and what we do, and then twist the natural ways that we respond to our environment. So the status is a natural way that we respond to that we as a people respond to our environment. Let's look at it. In ancient times, if we go back a few thousand years, the human being was not in these big cities that we're in now. We wasn't driving these vehicles. We didn't have these smartphones. We didn't have a Walmart down the street. We didn't have a McDonald's around the corner. We had us and the wilderness, and we got everything and anything we needed out of the wilderness. We pulled it from the ground. We got it from the earth, from nature. So we was moving through the wilderness. Now you got to keep in mind that understanding that every other creature was moving in the exact same way. And if other creatures was moving in the exact same way, then they was getting it quote unquote out the mud, just like we was getting it out the mud. And we could even be one of those things that those creatures was trying to get out of the mud. You know, if a certain predator, if certain prey was moving around, if a certain predator, I mean, was moving around and saw us, then they would attack us just to eat. Not because they didn't like us, but just because they needed to eat. And if you think about it, the human being is not the fastest. The human being is not the strongest. The human being doesn't fly the best. The human being doesn't swim the best. When it comes to physical level, there are other creatures that can always trump the human being. There is one thing that the human being has that other creatures don't have over the human being, and that's the human being's intelligence, our ability to outthink everything in our environment. Now, that along with the fact that we're gregarious, that we maintain our safety through numbers. We come together as as a group, as a community, what E is always preaching about and going crazy about, to be somebody who's so communal as E is, but then said he don't deal with people is an oxymoron in itself. But back to the point, uh, we are naturally a communicative type people, and I'm not just talking about black people. I'm talking about human beings in general. Being able to stick together is what allowed us to survive. being kicked out or cast out from amongst the group was a death sentence. If the group looked at you and saw that you wasn't following the codes that the group agreed to, if the group seen you as weird, if the group viewed you in any way as a hindrance to what it is that the group were trying to progress, you would be cast out. One of the greatest crimes that you could get, one of the greatest punishment you can get, it wasn't going to prison. It wasn't them putting you in an electric chair. They just said you are not allowed to come amongst us anymore. You're not allowed. We used to take the back in the day, one of the things we used to do when we viewed something as dishonorable, and we played it off the Star Trek show, but we call it the Cleon back turn. Whenever somebody violated to such a degree, we'd be like, he gets the Cleon back turn. We turn our back to this guy. He done violated the code, the honor that we live off of. This is an atavistic throwback to the human being. We always operated like this. And that was a sure death sentence for the person that was kicked out from amongst us. If we were moving through that wilderness and Eve started doing some funny style stuff, and we brought him before the tribune, and we decided that Eve was not worthy to be amongst the group anymore, and we kicked Eve out, Eve would be dead in a week, because other creatures and animals would kill Eve. I'm getting to the point. So this is our nature. Being able to be communicative is for our survival, our basic survival. Another thing, status is another thing that grew out of that, because those who added the greatest amount of value to the group was those who actually acquired more status. They acquired status. They was praised. They was memorized. They was turned into legend. They were turned into legends. Most of the time, when you read people's ancient script and you read about Moses taking these people out of the promised land, or you read about this God that did this, a lot of time these gods were just some guy who set the foundation for the civilization of that people. A lot of time these gods that they praise, or these great heroes, at one point in time were just an average guy who had ideals that allowed the civilization of that particular group of people to thrive and to grow. You know what I'm saying? And they create stories and tales and pass those tales down and on and on and on. So I'm getting to the point that we seek the approval of our people. We seek the approval of our society. And a lot of times in this society, we're in a capitalist society. We're in a society that's based off materialism, and that has promoted and marketed it greed. So now the things have become the things that we identify with. But that's not really the truth of what we are. I want to share this screen with y'all right quick.
You're hitting on really the essence of why we find ourselves in this position. Because like you're saying, when you get cast out of a society from that standpoint, then what is it that you live for? And what is it that you know? Because everything that you know now you don't have access to. So you basically like a child again, and you unprepared and incapable of being able to exist outside of the environment that you grew up in, or that
Yeah,
that created the safety net for you. You might have to expand.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we can see that.
Can you see it?
Yeah. So you starting
Okay.
at the bottom with
So yeah, so I want to show y'all this, but what I'm gonna do is I'm going to I'm gonna modify it, but
yeah,
I don't want to act like I'm just some guy that came up with something. I studied this when I was on hiatus. I studied this. This was in most of the sociology textbooks I was reading, and it was in some of the economic textbooks I was reading. But to me, when I first read this was brand new to me, reading about Abraham Maslow. But when I read this, I was like, wow, because what this does is it gives you a key to conduct. You ask yourself, when you see a person doing anything, all you got to do is judge them against this graph and ask yourself, which one of these needs is this person trying to fulfill? Because they're trying to fulfill one of these needs in some way, form, or fashion, if you really look at it. The first one is the physiological needs. At the very least, we don't want to be hungry, thirsty, exhausted, freezing, overheating, sick, or in pain. So your first need that you start out with is you trying to take care of your basic physiological needs. Second is safety. If we feel okay in this exact moment, we then also want to feel safe, confident we can avoid pain, hunger, and other dangers for the immediate future. Next is social. If we feel safe, then our social needs for love and belonging come into play. We feel secure when we're part of a tribe we can trust and unworried about rejection or alienation. The next is self esteem. Once we are secure in our social needs, our primal desires for status and self esteem come into play. We want to feel not only part of the group, but an admired and respected part of the group. Then last is self-actualization. Finally, now our core needs are met. We're ready to pursue our deepest desires for self-actualization, to become the most complete and authentic version of ourselves. With the fundamentals taken care of, we're free to act as we choose, aligned with our values and higher purpose. Now, when you look at this, you start to understand that when you start to compare this to the way human beings deal with reality, and even to start off answering your question, War, this hierarchy of needs lets you know why people have a natural desire for power. People have a natural desire for power. Some people believe that the only way I can get power is to make sure other people don't have it. Because as long as somebody else, if I'm the only person on my block with an AK-47 and nobody else has it, everybody else is fighting with slingshots, then I'm guaranteed that nobody else will ever be able to well, they would have a deep problem attempting to conquer me. But if the dude across the street has the same gun I have, now we're equal. Now he can converse with me in ways that I may not want him to converse. So a lot of people think that power is about making sure other people don't have power for that safety, but it's always about fulfilling these needs. And when we look at it, the more power you have, the easier it is for you to fulfill your physiological needs. The more power you have, the more safe you can be. The more power you have, the greater opportunity and chance are you to be able to fulfill your social needs, for you to be able to fulfill your self-esteem needs, and it puts you in a position at self-actualization. Finally, now our core needs are met. We're ready to pursue our deepest desire for self actualization, to become the most and complete and authentic version of ourselves. With the fundamentals taken care of, we're free to act as we choose, aligned with our values and higher purpose. Now, when you look at this and think about it, look at this. This is, to me, why people chase spirituality, why people become part of a religion, why people chose a faith, so to speak, and because they're trying to find self, they're trying to attune themselves with higher self. Now, and if you look at that, this is also a reason why many people like to get rich or trying to get wealth, because they free their time up. E talked about it, but he talked about it from a different perspective. E talked about it about he said that I remember one time he said that he values his quality of life more than the money. Basically, his ability to do what he wants to do with his time. But the problem what we start to look at is that when we're lacking finances, when we're lacking resources, it takes away from our time, because you either got to make a decision that you either got to get up and go to somebody's job in order to acquire some resources to take care of your basic needs, the core needs that they speak about in self-actualization on this pyramid chart here, or you could just divorce yourself 100% completely from society as a whole and say to yourself, I'm not doing it at all. I'd rather live under a bridge. I'd rather live from pillar to post and with different people as they're willing to show me kindness and feed me. So it becomes a decision that has to be made. In economics, we learn there's no such thing as a free lunch. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. Another principle, that's the first principle in economics. I think the third one is that you always face trade-offs. So in order to get one thing that you want, you have to simultaneously be willing to give up something else that you also want. So when we're trying to meet these core needs, it takes away from our time and our energy in order to try to really meet our highest need, which is self-actualization. And that's where the desire for power comes from. Now, when I developed the Uhuru Shule manhood study class when I was on hiatus, I took Maslow's hierarchy of needs and I changed it. I changed it around in order to fit, so that the people that I was speaking with could understand and comprehend where I was trying to go. And I changed it to this. It went from, and it's still Maslow's. I just changed the word and made it more simple. Your first need is survival. Your first need was survival. Second need was love and belonging. Third need was power, freedom, then fun. So I changed it to 5. And I broke it down in that way. And I explained it to the brothers that the first thing you need is to survive. That's the first thing that drives every move that you make. It's for survival. As Maslow said, you want to make sure that you can eat. You want to make sure that you're warm. You have somewhere comfortable to sleep. You want to make sure that things are not killing you, are not attacking you. You want to survive. And when you're in survival mode, your focus is to make sure that self is all right. Then the next, once those basic physiological needs are taken care of, then you have a natural desire, as we talked about earlier, to combine and connect with other people. So you want to be a part of something. That's what drives you to become a Democrat. It's what drives you to become a Christian or a Muslim. It's what drives you to marry somebody, to get in a relationship, to want to be a part of a family. It's what drives you to join an organization. Even us that joined the Panther Party, it's that drive to be a part of something bigger than self. It's a part to feel love. And you got to think about it because it ties you back to that survival need. When you're sick, you're not qualified to take care of self. But if you got people around you that love you, they'll take care of you for you. They'll make sure things are not attacking you or eating you. You know what I'm saying? When you're by yourself and somebody decides that they want to take from you, you only have your strength to depend on. But when you're part of a committee of a group, then those who love you will come out in your defense and protect you and help you. So that's one of the reasons why it leads us back to survival. One of the reasons why we have this natural drive for love and belonging and being part of a group. Then your next need is power, because anytime that you gain any level, any leverage, I just talked about it, there's always somebody else that feels or believes somewhere on the planet. There's going to be somebody who comes to this idea that I got mine and I'm pretty all right now. But if that guy across the street or that guy down the street decides that he wants mine, then I'm in danger again. So let me be proactive on this. Let me go and make sure nobody has the type of power that I have so that they can attack me. Or let me go take from his in order to make sure that I have more than I need. So I know that I know that I'm all right. And when you have power, you have the ability to defend against that. When you have power, you have control, because power is the ability to bring about a result. That's how power is. If we wanted to deal with a basic definition, power is the ability to cause an effect, to bring about a result, to transform something in your immediate environment. Most people are just reacting to the stimuli in their environment. Power is about having the ability to make the environment react to your thoughts. That's what power is on the
Look,
most essential and basic level. Go
while
ahead.
you let me jump in, but do me a favor and check out the email I just sent you, and I want you to show that diagram up as well as the one to offset the one you put up with Maslow. The thing about that, and I think this is what drives us home, is how did we establish our values and what are our virtues? Because I think what happens is happening to Black people is that our sense of connectedness is based around our assimilation, kind of what we talked about earlier before we actually dived into this bill, is by not realizing that we are operating from an assimilated position. As Black people, we don't have a power base, a collective power base, because our power base is based upon that of people that are assimilated into a society that is already established. And from that standpoint, it wasn't established on any premise of what Black power means. So when we find ourselves in a collective attack because of our Blackness, again, for those people that have been under the delusion that we don't live in a society or exist in a society to where your Blackness is going to always haunt you or follow you from those people that are in power. Because of that awareness, that sense of awareness, now all of a sudden they're seeing themselves kicked out of that society that they always thought they was a part of, which in reality they wasn't. They just, from a consumption level, and that to me goes back into consumer power. From a consumption level, your needs were the needs of that society. You were meeting those needs of the society by being a large consumer base. But when that society creates a situation where you are no longer needed as a consumer base, then you as a people don't have no element of power. So now you're cast out, at a greater level. And so then things start shaping through your head in terms of the realization that you never actually had power. So when assimilated people start to begin to recognize what assimilation means and what it means to not have power as a people, then we find ourselves in this position. So that drawing that this diagram I wanted you to pull up, because notice how from the First Nation perspectives, it starts off with self-actualization. You seen that one? You seen this before, Sight?
I haven't.
Okay. So this one, the thing is it starts off with self-actualization, and then you build up the community actualization. And then from there, you go into cultural perpetuity. And what's more powerful about that is that it starts from a position of recognizing that there is no individual. And so your existence is based upon what you contribute to the collective. And as a collective, what do we do to be able to create a situation to where we have an intact cultural environment, which everything revolves around our power, because we have a cultural way of our culture way of life is intact, which means everything that we are, everything that we do is based around what we can do as a collective. And this kind of hits on what E always talks about in terms of realizing that our foundation is from our culture perpetuity. So now the thing about that is when an assimilated people look up and realize that they don't have anything intact as it applies to a foundational culture, how do we have a community actualization? What makes up our community? Because now you have to talk about what made up your community. When we go into social, economic, and political power, your community is made up of an environment to where outsiders actually control the businesses of your community. So outsiders control the tax base. So outsiders determine their placement. They determine what you're able to eat, how far you're able to drive, what kind of work you're able to do. Everything that exists within your environment that created that community actualization is based on people that are blood sucking from you. So then you really begin to see that your community is based on a consumption-based environment, consumption-based population. So now that takes you back down to self-actualization, and you start to begin to realize that, well, as a person, what is it that I have formed my life and my existence around? What gave me power as a person? What created me to be able to see things the way they are? What created my safety net? What created my sense of belongings? Where did my self-esteem lie? Because then when we think about that, that's why we see groups of our people purchasing certain, trying to look flashy in terms of building their self-worth, because they really don't own anything. Because when we talk about wealth, wealth is not based upon simply what you can consume and how big of a purchase tag the consumption items have. Does this make sense?
Yep. Yep. And that's why I was saying that's why I was going into the biological reason for it, because things that we purchase have absolutely nothing to do with power. Matter of fact, the more you want to purchase, 9 times out of 10, you're giving away your power. So that in itself is not even tied to power. It's our false ideal of a need for status. We're equating status with power. We're equating that like when I went into the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when they talked about the esteem needs. So we're equating those esteem needs, those the need to feel important, the need to feel valued. That becomes the only currency that we have to trade on. George Jackson talked about this, and I can't remember if it was Solid Brother Blood in My Eye, but he talked about it. He said that wish I'd have known I was gonna quote him. I just pulled the notebook out, but I don't want to waste our time getting it. But he said that when the robber robs, when the revolutionary revolts, when the rebel throws a Molotov cocktail, he said these things are happening because they're the natural need and desire of the powerless to feel powerful. They're revolting basically against that oppression. They don't know it. They're not aware of it. They're it's kind of like in the movie The Matrix when he said, you know something is wrong, but you don't know what it is. You know, it's like a splinter in your mind. You know, you know something's not right, but you just don't know what it is. So you respond the way a child does, and you start throwing a temper tantrum. You know something ain't right, but you don't know exactly what it is, how to make sense out of it, or even the right answer to it. So George Jackson was talking about that we all have this natural desire to be fulfilled. We all have it. We just don't know how to properly respond to it. So we respond in in those various and different ways. And let me add these last two because I was talking about how I modified Maslow's to fit only five categories. And I did that for a reason. Everything to me, there's no point in waxing poetic and dealing with any philosophical concepts if we can't put it to use. It's like one thing that I used to always tell y'all that my favorite words was practical and pragmatic. I need to be able to use it. It need to be practical. It need to be able to just talking about it, just using it to sound smart to me is not enough. We need to be able to take it break it down and then apply it. We need to put it in the application. And so this is why I broke it down like this. I went to survival, I went to love and belonging, I went to power, freedom, and then fun. Freedom is a very important thing for the human being. It's extremely important. It's a natural desire to not feel caged, to not feel restricted. And when we talk about freedom, people think freedom is just being able to do what I want, when I want, how I want to do it. And that's not necessarily freedom because freedom is checked by a rule. The rule is that my freedom cannot extend itself into ease freedom, meaning that my freedom cannot be based on my freedom cannot be founded on the need to take away from ease freedom. The very moment that happens, freedom no longer exists because I just set a precedent. If I can take away ease freedom in order to make myself feel freer, I just set a precedent for others to follow because that's what we do as human beings. We copy. And by me setting that precedent of taking away another's freedom so that I can feel free, others will start to do the exact same thing. And now we just eliminated freedom. So freedom cannot exist in that state. I'm not going to get into the full details of what the Huru Shule said freedom is, but it defined freedom as physical freedom and economic freedom and a spiritual freedom. And there are ways that these three are broke down. And these three have to be working in concert in order for the human being to actually be free. And they also cannot violate the rule that I just stated, that my freedom cannot take away from your freedom. So if I'm spiritually, economically, and physically free, and I'm not violating the number one principle of freedom, meaning that I'm not taking away another's freedom, I've just produced freedom. I've just produced a state where I am free. And then last is fun. We need entertainment. We need something that allows us to take it off a little bit, to relax, to chill. When we went to Utah and marched in the mountains, we went to let it go a little bit. We needed to have a little fun. Now, the problem in our society, to go back to what he said earlier, is a lot of time we put fun in front of everything else. And that's where we make the wrong sacrifice. Because we chase fun first. We chase fun over freedom. We chase fun over power. We chase fun over community, love and belonging, and we chase fun over survival. And then we find ourselves in a situation where we can't even take care of our basic needs because we put fun first. Fun, fun is left last for a reason because fun is the reward you've given yourself once you have taken care of all your other responsibilities and your other obligations. So to go back to the original question, I wanted to go through all that because to go back to the original question is you're dealing with a people who have had their ideal and their concept of power completely ripped from them. The belief of power is completely stripped from them. Matter of fact, some of us even believe power is bad. When we hear power, we think, "Ooh, only the bad people want to have power." Just like, "Ooh, only the bad people want to be rich." Only the bad people. These are the lies that we have been taught. And as long as we're bogged down in those lies, there is no way for us to actually get free. There's no way for us to actually get that thing that it is that we all say that we want. because over power is freedom. We want to be free. Free is more important than anything else. But you can't be free if you don't have the power to protect your freedom. And that's where I think that we're lost at. Now, you talked about the self-worth was defined in many cultures, ours and many others was defined by the value you're able to give to the community. And you was right. And the community and the culture of of our society taught that to the human being. You can see it in many Asian cultures. When somebody feels like they've dishonored the family, they're willing to commit suicide. They're ashamed. They're willing to walk away. They're willing to say, "Man, hell no! I done did this dishonorable act. I can never." You watch the old Karate Kid Part Two when the guy he felt that and then he wouldn't admit it that it was him himself. I can't remember his name, but he felt that Daniel's son had shamed him, and he ran off into the rain while the storm was happening. He'd rather go out and face the rain than to be there with his people. Because he was too embarrassed and he was too ashamed. And he felt the only way he can get his honor back was to come and defeat Daniel's son in a one-on-one combat because he was ashamed. And that was something that existed. Now, I'm going to say this, and this is going to be very controversial because that was the way things were. It is not for us how things are now because of the hell that we've suffered and went through. And no people have ever had their complete culture and their power base completely ripped from them and have rebounded from that on the planet. You cannot give me an example of it. So I don't have an answer to how to fix that because I don't have any history. If we come up with an answer to that, we would have actually created it. We would have actually came up with a solve for something no one has ever solved. You know, and that's what we're dealing with. We always talk about how we were and our natural way of doing things, and and uh and it's right and exact, but how do we manifest it? We all know, we just talked about it last week or 2 weekends ago. We just discussed it that when we even tried to bring this to revolutionary conscious people, it caused guns to get pulled out in a Panther headquarters. So the question is, how do you solve this? I don't even think he know how to solve it. Matter of fact, I know he don't know how to solve it, or he wouldn't have retreated from society. He has retreated from society because he's gave up. He doesn't see a solve. He know what the answer is. He know what the answer is, but he don't know how to apply that answer to the problem. It's one thing when you're dealing with mathematics and you looking at a problem and you say 2 plus 2, and you say to yourself, "Man, that's 4." And you're trying to tell everybody around you it's 4, and everybody's looking at you like, "Man, you tripping. We trying to solve this problem, man." So if we take the 2, hey, it's 4. Man, you get talking crazy. You can't show me nowhere where nobody else has applied for. Let me go back to this. So E then retreated from society because it's like he feels that he knows the answer, but how do you give that answer to a sleeping people? How? How does it work?
E.
Well, I don't know that I think part of our issue, well, I know part of our issue. Where did everybody go? Hello?
We here. We here.
Is the crystallization of this idea of getting it to the people, or even what freedom is, and all of those things. So for me, in my head, I could be 100% wrong, whatever. The answer is in the problem. And the problem for me is them people, that culture, that lifestyle that we've bought into. And I know I've said it a few times that as what is that snake that is eating its own tail in a circle? I forget the name of it, but it's say a glyph or whatnot, or an idea that this snake is going around in a circle and is now devouring its own tail. And for me, that's the reality that we're dealing with. That problem that's infected the entire world is eating itself. And the problem has been that as long as that's in place, as long as that's expanding, there is no room for anything else. But as that eats itself, as that destroys itself, as that faces its own inevitable destruction by its own hand, there's room, there's a void, there's space that's going to be created, that is being created. And it's in that space that folks that are prepared to implement that lifestyle that benefited us for so many years are going to be in a position to actually live that lifestyle, to grow that lifestyle, to develop that lifestyle, essentially for it to be reborn. So for me, it's not so much that I've given up on the idea, as y'all like to talk about, the idea of the people, but attempting to shove a completely counter, totally different, opposite lifestyle, mindset, culture, reality down the throats of those of us who are still at this point being fed on a 24-hour basis. This constant feed, this constant garbage that we're fed that reinforces the pervading culture, racism, white supremacy. We're fed that shit constantly all day long. So logically, it doesn't make sense. If I'm trying to clean a pool and I'm on one end of the pool, putting chemicals in, trying to balance it, and Psych is on the opposite end of the pool, dumping piss and shit, and garbage and waste into that other end of the pool. War comes up and War joins him. 2 or 3 more people jump in and join him. I'm not going to win that battle. So logically, it doesn't make sense to continue to attempt to shove something down the throats of people who not only on the surface don't want it, but who on the surface resist and fight it. You know, we all know people change when they hit their lowest point. People want something different when every other avenue has played itself out, at least that they can perceive every other avenue. People don't want to build something. They would much rather join something. So in my mind, someplace like Haiti, all things being contextual, is a success story insofar as they have gone toward freedom. They threw off the physical shackles, not had Abraham Lincoln come and say, okay, the shackles are gone. No, they threw them off themselves and maintained enough of the culture of our own selves. You know, I've seen, never been, but have seen so many pictures, videos, talked to so many people who are Haitian, who have lived there, who have visited there, who are a part of that culture, and seeing just the way that they dress, the way that their markets move, the way that they address the world, that you can take those video clips and those ideas and find the same scenarios, you know, a picture, what to call it, but a replication of much of what goes on in the less Western developed parts of the continent. In other words, there's still a reflection in much of what they do of the way it is we've conducted ourselves, the culture that we've had all of these many years outside of racism, white supremacy, outside of the European. So looking at them as a template, because we're not even as far as they are. They have issues that the US and the West has amplified, has started, has put in, you know, we know that enough of the history to know that they've been leaning on Haiti for years. Why? Because Haiti was a success story. You know, you want to talk about it being applied and how how we can use this and all. That's a success story. The only nation made up of former slaves. I mean, come on. That's a success standing from where we are, absolutely, because we ain't even close to that. But to be able to just say that and then have the rest of the Western world be so pissed off about that shit that they still to this day are leaning on your ass. So I have to say that that is very much, again, that's the finish line at this point, because that's all we know. That's as far as we've seen freedom go, is throwing it off and establishing your own shit. Yeah, you still gonna have issues. Yeah, you still gonna have some fucked up shit going on, leaders that don't want it or full of shit and blah, blah, blah. All of that shit's gonna come. But we haven't even gotten to that point. So in my head, you know, again, all things being levels of freedom, levels of that. If we look around right now, that's a depiction of freedom. That's a depiction of what culture. And you have a group of people who are raised in and steeped in and a part of our culture of what we can accomplish. You know, so for me, it's not a matter of having given up, but it's a matter of having realized I have no place in attempting to get someone else to do it. You know, it's been, y'all have known me, it's been the same old song for me for years. Do for self. Do it. Stop fucking trying to convince somebody to do it and do it. We need better education and shut the fuck up and do it. We need, you know, our own this, our own, then shut the fuck up and do it. If we're not willing to do it, we don't deserve to be free. So until we've until we're able to embrace that reality that yes, we have to do for ourselves. And the first step in doing for ourselves is realizing who the fuck self is and then doing it. And so for me at this point, that's why I am where I am. I serve in my head better as an example of what so-called individuals can do to contribute. Imagine if there were 5 people on the same block, in the same neighborhood, raising the food, you know, raising the animals, raising the garden, having sessions with the children, teaching the children, all of that shit. Yes, I'm one person and I'm not trying to get, if there's someone else that comes along that has that similar mindset, then yes, then we can link up. Then we can begin to develop and have it grow out. But again, I have to establish that example. I have to be what it is I've said for all of these years, not trying to get somebody to do it, but just simply doing it. And so for me, I think that is the answer. We have an example, but we still to this day will make excuses, come up with reasons why and why not to do that shit. From the most corporate, you know, white-minded black man or woman to the most wannabe revolutionary cat in town. We all still are a part of that indoctrination that continues day in and day out for all of us and plays its part in keeping us from moving forward and doing those things that at some point we have to recognize are the answer, are the thing. It's not that fucking complicated. That's one of the reasons I don't really deal with people, because we like to make things complicated. It's not fucking complicated. You just don't want to do it.
Well, hey, let me step in right there. I think what we're getting at is the pinnacle of us being able to live out and operate in a position of freedom is what we call cultural capital. And I think the issue comes in as, just look at it from to me, the idea of being domesticated. When a person looks up and just now and realizes that they've been living a domesticated existence, but now they're forced to operate outside of the fence of that confinement that has contained them. And see, I think that's also what we're looking at. The difference between a person being forced to be removed from their master and one that has chosen to be removed from their master. Because if a person is being removed from their master by force, now all of a sudden they, again, like I started out, you're getting overwhelmed with helplessness because you don't know what you are, where to go, what to belong to. You're tribeless, and you're also in an environment that's completely foreign to you. And all of a sudden, this thrust has came in. Whereas going into the example that you gave about Haiti, when you have a person or a group of people or a society that has accepted the fact that it must remove itself from being oppressed and has went through the steps in the process of self-actualization as it applies to being a community, as it applies to having an intact way of life, then the copeness, the absence of what I am is not going to be the founding struggle that we have. Because if I'm being forced to realize that I've been living a domesticated existence and then being cast out, I'm going to fight and struggle with you because you're talking about somebody that already is in that sense of awareness. And since that person is in that sense of awareness, they've moved beyond those. They've already grown in those areas to where the rest of us have all of a sudden found ourselves lacking in. And then not only that, when a person has accepted assimilation, and then at the same time being forced to realize that they're being kicked out of that assimilation and being kicked out of that assimilation without any intact sense of power, whether that be individual, family, or collective, because everything was defined by that domesticated, assimilated existence. Now all of a sudden they're completely naked, physically, mentally, and spiritually naked, in absence of anything that actually belongs to them. So that actually undoes everything that we talked about on that hierarchy of needs in terms of who they are, because everything was redefined. Everything now has to be redefined from a position of what it is that I can do for self, which goes back to the self-determination point that you're talking about. Because if I don't have a sense of self-determination and my makeup was defined for me, because again, I came into this as domesticated. It's like when we talk about Black History Month. Most people, when they think Black History Month, they start with us, talking about people like Harriet Tubman. So from the standpoint of talking about folks that have basically created a culture of resistance, but yet they're still a slave. So their definition or their position of power started in slavery. It didn't start before we were oppressed as a people. Before we lost our culture, it started in a position of now I've lost all this stuff, and this is an example that I have as it applies to Black Power, of someone that realized that this is where we are and this is what we wanted. So then how do I go back and find something, or how do I go back and gravitate around living in a society that operates with Black people being in control of its own environment and having a cohesiveness with nature, a cohesiveness with one another? Because again, when we've been stripped of all of that, we don't even know how to get along with one another, because our existence was based upon what we can collectively do as a consumer-based people. So now all of a sudden I have to learn what it means to be a producer so that I can now control my own environment, but yet I'm operating from a position of working with the next individual that I viewed as an individual, as opposed to viewing as my family, as opposed to viewing as my own people. So I'm now having to learn what it means to even deal or embrace my brother and my sister, because we've been broken down from our family, our collective community, family, and individual structure, and it was built up based upon a consumption base. So when you deal with the people that see that, That kind of goes back to me even when if we go back to the at the headquarters. Remember how that one time that you was tripping off of how Noah had said there's no room for growth in the headquarters, is because he couldn't see. He couldn't see his existence. He couldn't see what it is that it meant to be in an environment that is talked about self-determination. Because if I can't see what self-determination is, and I don't have a definition, a working, going back to Psych, what Psych's saying, a working application of what self-determination is, then everything is confined in terms of what I have the ability to be. So we can't even get to the level of recognizing that we can have a freedom by operating on a collective capacity, because everything I've done has been defined for me by my oppressor. And now all of a sudden, a lot of our people, or a higher percentage, should I say, of our people are waking up to the reality that that false sense of security, that false sense of belonging was something that was defined for you as you being a consumer based, meeting a consumer based need of that society, but not because you were actually considered to be equal or an equal component of what that society made up. So we really been operating on this false sense of what defined us as a people. And so all of a sudden now I have to learn what it means to be African.
And what I think was doing, he's basically giving you he's basically giving basically what the average person is going to say. They're gonna say, with all of this that I'm suffering and dealing with, now you got to tell me I got to learn how to be an African, and we see how difficult that is because our people will rather be anything else but African. Look at this indigenous movement they have going on. Look at the Black Hebrew Israelites. Everybody is arguing that there's something else. They're saying what they're doing is, to me, this is what they're doing. They're finding the truth and turning it into a lie. Because we were the original Black Hebrew Israelites. We are that people. But all of us wasn't Black Hebrew Israelites. There's just one part of who we were. We are the indigenous man of the planet. We are the original people of the planet Earth. So therefore, anywhere you go, you can find us as being the indigenous. So yes, we were here, but that doesn't define the complete totality of who we are. Dr. Khaled, I think, said it best. He said, the world is our home. 11.7 million square miles of Africa is the throne that we ruled our home from. So they're finding these little corners of who we were and saying, "Oh, that's who the totality of who we are," and that's where the truth is not at. That's what I think we're having a problem with. But that's how poison that's how much poison they put on us about Africa, that we'll do anything but be African. Go ahead, E.
And I would agree with you 100%. It's the same as religion, and just like Christianity has a piece of the truth, Islam has a piece of the truth, this indigenous stuff has a piece of the truth, and we're mistaking that one piece for the totality of it. Now, I ask you, if you talk to somebody repeatedly over and over and say, here's $1 million, and they say, I don't want it, but this $1 million is going to take care of all your problems and things will be set, I don't want it. How many times do you go through that scenario before you mush on and say, okay, you don't want it? If you're stuck there, I'm going to keep saying the same thing. I'm going to keep saying it's $1 million. I'm going to keep saying Africa. I'm going to keep saying culture. I'm going to keep saying it. Matter of fact, fuck it. I'm going to go live it. I'm going to show you better than I can tell you. How many times do you spin your wheels? Because yes, and it's not even something we have to come up. We don't have to. It's not conjecture. It's not we think people are going to do this. We know it for a fact because we've done this for the past 30 fucking years, trying to get people this same damn conversation. And that's what irritates me, is it's the same conversation that we had in the headquarters back in the day. It's the same conversation. At some point, there was a conversation, are we Black or African American? Are we Negro or are we Black? Are we colored or are we Negro? We've had this same, using the example you use, we've had that same conversation. And so that same mindset, not necessarily the same person or the same individual, so-called individuals, but that same mindset kicks in because it's been passed down, reinforced by racism, white supremacy, as well as our own parts in what's going on. It's been reinforced over and over again. So to the question, somebody says, "Oh my God, all the time I'm going through, and now I got to learn to be African." My answer is yes. There is no other way. You cannot free yourself if you don't know who self is. It's an impossibility. It's logically corrupt. It makes no sense whatsoever. So in my head, I can't do nothing else for you. I can help you find that if you're willing. The lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of understanding. And I can't give something to a person or people who don't fucking want it and who become violent when you try to give it to them and want to argue arguments that we've all had umpteen million times, had pistols pulled on us, had conversations, blah, blah, blah. Have that conversation again, constantly, with another generation, because it's only getting worse. I don't know if y'all have noticed this, but generationally, it's only getting worse. Huey and them in some ways, Malcolm and them in some ways had it better, had it easier than we had, because the foundation, the cultural identity, they knew back then that we was a people. Whatever we said we were, whatever we called, there was still an identity where we would identify with one another on some level, and it was still conscious. It was still a part of our reality. At this point, when you've got, I saw another little boy. Y'all remember that RT guy, that little boy with that messed up rap? I've seen a couple of more of little kids about his age doing fucked up raps, tossing money and dollars and doing all that dumb shit they do with stacks of money and whatnot. So it's getting progressively worse, and it will continue to do so, in my mind, because there's nothing stopping it. There's nothing powerful enough to push against it. So more and more will buy into it until, as I said, in my mind, it's going to eat itself. So you can either stay plugged in to the matrix and go down with the matrix when it goes down, or you position yourself to be a part of the reality that's existed within us, the reality that's existed physically for millions of years, the reality of us being who it is we are. Because you can continue to stay plugged in, live the illusion, pretend that you're free, not realize that you're not because you don't even know who you are, much less what freedom is to you. Or you can figure out, okay, what is freedom actually? What does it mean to actually be free? And if you're not willing to have those conversations, me personally, I don't have a lot of time for that. I don't, because I'm busy living the reality that I've been begging Black folks to do for all of these years. So yeah, that's why my ideology, my philosophy is not to awaken the minds of the masses of the people, but it's to connect with those like-minded individuals who at the very least want to do something, want to build something. Then in the midst, I can hook up with a brother or sister who is not talking about Africa stuff at all, but they're talking about raising chicken. They're talking about raising goats. They're talking about feeding off the land. I can begin to build with them. Hey, how you I'm thinking about starting quail. How you do quail? I see you got some quail. Tell me about that, blah, blah, blah. And in the midst of those conversations, in the midst of building that, the conversations about who we are come up. The conversations about Black folk reality come up. The conversations about what's going on in the world come up. And that's how community develops. That's how community develops organically. As long as you're talking about coming up in the rat race, I don't have any help for you. I can't help you do that. I can help you build your own shit, add your shit to the shit that I got going on, and now we have a community. But to help you get that high power job or that new rap song or whatever, I can't help you buy into that reality.
I'm glad you said that, because I've been forgetting to bring this up. David has
Bring
been
it.
he's been asking us on he left it in the comments a few times. He started when when we had the sister and I can't think of the sister name from New Mexico.
I know.
I know
Your friend.
No,
I can't think
we
of
had on the show.
Celinda, my
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
When we had Celinda on and she was talking, so David is offering people to move down to Ecuador
Mm-hmm.
and help form the land he has. He said he's willing to
Yep.
share it, form the land, and just basically be free and start being self-sufficient. And he was asking if anybody, he said, any takers, and nobody has responded to him on that. Nobody's responded to the brother, but I just wanted to
That's
bring
what
that
I'm
up on the show.
that's
Yeah,
what I'm talking about. That's the shit right there.
yeah,
I mean, there is no unless you have the armaments. Let's just be real about it. I learned this from Psych years ago. That gold chain around your neck is yours until I decide I won't take it. If you can't stop me from taking it, it was never really yours. It was mine. You were just holding it for me until I decided, I got a new outfit and it would go good with that necklace you got. So I'm gonna take it because I want to wear it. So if you're not able to defend what it is you have, you don't really have it. So if we are not in a position as a group of people, whatever they small group, all of us, whatever, to defend against the armaments of entire nations, the US, China, whoever it is, none of it's going to be locked in and solid, period. That's just the reality. I don't care what you do. I don't care how righteous you are. As long as they're able to move the way they're able to move, there's always that possibility. But as a people, as a matter of fact, David put it very nicely one of the times he was on the show. I think he was on the show. Where he asked the question, what do African people do? What do African people do? And his answer was, African people build. Not
yeah,
because we have to, not because it's written down somewhere, not because someone said, hey, let's go. No, because it's in us. It's what the fuck we do. It's life. That's what the earth does. The earth always grows some shit. No matter how much concrete you put down, eventually there's going to be a rose growing from that concrete. And that's us. We grow. And so perpetuating that culture and that lifestyle is the revolution. If they completely knocked out all African culture and non-Western European culture all over the planet, it was all 100% antiseptic, sanitized, completely gone from the planet, then we've lost. But as long as that propensity, as long as that indwelling, as long as that push to build, because when we build and we're in our right mind, we build the right stuff. And that, like I said, that's David said that. So yes, we build. We constantly build. That's what we do. And we have to be in a position where we're building, position mentally to where we're building the things that are actually going to be beneficial. We build stuff within the European construct, within racism, white supremacy, but it's not our stuff. We're building to consume. We're building to get others to consume. We're building to do what it is we've been told to do within a capitalist structure, within the white mindset. That's why we build what we build. When we're in our mindset, we build based on us. Hugh and them were building it. Didn't realize it because they didn't have that cultural mindset. They had survival programs like feeding your children, taking care of the old folks and the sick people. That's not survival. That's us building what we're supposed to build.
So I would say what we're talking about is really the questions that I had. What hinders our ability to see that Black people, that we need power? And to me, what it goes into, what he and Psych is saying, is that the first element of what self-actualization means is that in order to even be able to start embracing something outside of this environment, you have to first be in the awareness of self-determination and self-sufficiency. So what he is saying is, if a person has at least accepted self-sufficiency, then they're unhinged enough from the assimilation to where it's way much easier to start now developing power, because as an individual, they have accepted the accountability to be able to do for self. Go ahead. Correct.
Not easier, possible. And you said
Possible.
the word.
Thank you.
You said the
Thank
word accountability. We live in a society where accountability is a no-no. You don't take accountability for a goddamn thing. If you get good at not taking accountability, you can become president someday. You get rewarded for putting accountability someplace else and continue doing what you're doing. And that, for me, we said it a while ago, for me, that's what freedom is. I think Sight got close to this point that people, we're not free because it ain't easy. We think it's free. We think it's freedom is being able to buy what we want, go where we want, wear our pants the way we want. All that easy shit. All that shit is easy. Getting a nice job is easy. Being an entrepreneur is easy. I would challenge entrepreneurs who are making big money in the rat race, making dollars and shit. Come do this shit. Come do this shit. Because not only when you do this shit do you have to maintain a foot within the system so that you can fund your shit, but you actually also have to do the shit. If I had big money and whatnot, I could just buy a shed with tables and whatnot in it, or pay somebody to build tables and but that's not taking accountability. That's not freedom. That's paying somebody else to do the job that self-sufficiency says you can do your damn self. And that's what we are. Self-sufficiency is building. You can't build shit unless you're self-sufficient. You can't build the right shit unless you're self-actualized, self-aware, knowing what's going on. So we don't want to take accountability. We don't want to be self-sufficient because that's the ultimate accountability. I know that if my chickens die, matter of fact, I ain't bought eggs in good 2 goddamn years. So myself, I may not be award-winning freedom guy, revolutionary, but I ain't bought eggs for 2 goddamn years. So I'm doing something right, moving along those lines. And I know that if they stop producing eggs, I'm accountable for that. There's something that I've got to fix. Either I'm doing something wrong, something's going on, I have to take care of it. You know what I mean? So any entrepreneur that thinks they got, what it takes to, or thinks that coming up in this system is something, I would challenge them to do this shit. Be an entrepreneur and be self-sufficient. Being independent, being able to pay somebody else to do something is not freedom. Being able to do that something is freedom. Taking care of yourself, not buying something, taking care of yourself. And I'm not knocking anybody who's along the way in there anywhere because it's all a process. I look at some of them cats, somebody told me I'm a farmer. And it's like, I can't accept that because I've seen real Black farmers with acres, with cattle, riding out with horses, standing up to the police, telling them to get off my land. We heard gunshots. Yeah, it's my land. I'm shooting on my land. Get the fuck off my land. I see that, and it's like, that's a fucking farmer. That's not me. I would like to be that, but that's nowhere near where I'm at. So I'm not taking away from anybody who's along that spectrum anywhere. But we have to realize where we are on that and where we're attempting to go. So yeah, that would be wonderful. That's a 90-day challenge. Send an entrepreneur down here to Florida and put them to work back here building tables and turning a shed into a tool shop, not because it looks good, not because I get to watch it or play it or sit back and say, oh, that's great. No, doing all the work to build tables and shelves and turn a shed into a workshop so that you can turn around and what? Work. You know what I'm saying? You're building something so that you can build something, so that you can build something. It's a constant build. And that's something that level of accountability does not exist to any real significant, heavy degree in a society. It's just the opposite. So yeah, for me, that I guess those would be the 2 ingredients, accountability and self-sufficiency. I'm gonna have to think on that, on how they work together and figure out, because that's an interesting prospect that just crossed my mind.
Well, to me, you just broke it down, and in fact, you identified what gets in the way of ability to recognize that. I said the word easy from the standpoint of someone still being stuck in the matrix, and you said practice. You see, the difference would be that if a person thinks that they can utilize an external, or should I say, still use part of the capitalistic mentality or the indoctrinated mentality as the process, then what happens is they get someone else to still do the work for them, which means they don't have the ability to do the practice. And that only through doing the practice am I able to commit myself to the process. And so if I'm not able to do the practice, then I can't practice self-determination or self-sufficiency. And so self-sufficiency is the practice and the process. And when going back to what Psych was saying, when a person is unwilling to unlearn what they have accepted to be their foundation, which is kind of like when he gave the reference of Black Hebrew Israelites. To me, when I think of that, I think of somebody that has been indoctrinated in the Christian value system and unwilling to throw away the foundation of how the Bible has been applied to them as a people. And instead of starting from scratch all over, basically what they've done is they want to be able to incorporate the path that they've been on, which has been the wrong path. They want to be able to incorporate that into this new direction. So I want to be able to take what the master have taught me, and I want to apply that to some level or some degree of freedom. And I think that's the problem, is that we're unwilling to let go of our oppressor, our oppressed ways, and what we've been taught to keep us domesticated. And as long as we're unwilling to let that go, then there's no room for us to practice what it means to be self-sufficient, because I'm still trying to hold on to what basically enslaved me in the first place. So then it is easy. Easy is the word I'm going to choose to use, as opposed to practice, because to practice something is a whole new different arena for me. And I'm so indoctrinated in my way of thinking, is that I want to hold on and utilize the oppressive path for my next development, as if I do it long enough, then it automatically should take me to that level of being elevated. And I think that's part of one of the biggest problems of the dynamics, which is why you would see people saying, well, I'm going to get my money right first. I'm going to get my money right first, and then I'm going to start doing that. In other words, they think they can buy their way to revolution, because they think that money, having access to that money, or the economic engine, is going to put them in a position to be on that path, but not realizing that what we're talking about is the practice itself is what's going to teach you how to live live in that capacity. It ain't about how much money you got. It's about being able to identify what a resource is and then make an applicable use of that resource, which can be done with anything in your environment, which is why we can go and see how somebody on the continent, how we can talk about how they have engineers and scientists that are able to build stuff by going to a junkyard and building fully functional robots out of scraps, versus thinking that I have to buy all of these brand new components and off the assembly line and do this and do that and before I'm able to get to that point. And so it's that mental aptitude of recognizing what it means to be in a position of self-determination as an individual first. So to me, that precursor that you talked about, to where it's the only way, it's not the easy way, like I stated, and that easy way being actually what gets in the way, is that lack of that definition of self. That gets in the way of our ability to recognize the condition of what it means to have the ability to deal with the need of power. And so I think you hit it right on the nail, really, when you use the word practice and accountability in the same sentence. Because if we're not willing to let go of what the master has taught me, then there's no true path to the process. That's how I end my sentences, y'all, for y'all to jump in. I get quiet.
I was trying to give Syke some room. I know I talked for a second. I was trying to give him a little bit of space.
Well, Psych had to spend his morning at clinic, so I'm over here multitasking.
No doubt.
Yes. Yes.
No doubt. But that's, someone said years and years ago when we were doing this shit that if freedom was easy, everybody'd be doing it.
Yeah.
We'd be free by now if it was some easy shit. The reality of it is freedom is difficult. Freedom is hard. Freedom will break your back. Freedom makes you sweat in ways you didn't know that you could sweat. It makes you, realize that, one of the things that I think you mentioned one time, challenging me or putting the question out there, Psych, You know, how does this prepper stuff, what does it have to do with the dude in the hood? What does the dude have to do with the average cat in the street? And for me, one of the things that mindset, the homestead of the prepper or whatnot, is that you begin to see things as they are. You begin to see, you know, how you can go to the store and buy a particular piece of hardware or whatever intended to do a thing. On the package, it says this is a hanger. This is blah, blah, blah. But then there comes a point where you start looking at it like, okay, it says it's a hanger, but I can use it for a brace. I can use it for this. I can use it for that. So you start to see things on a more fundamental level and see where those pieces fit together. You know, you don't stop at what it is you're told. You go beyond and you think about it and figure it out, how to make what it is you need and what it is you have team up and address what it is you're needing to get done. You know, whatever piece of material that you actually need versus what you actually have out here in your little stash. Okay, make that shit come together so that it addresses what it is you're attempting to do. You know, and for us as a people, that's something that we're well equipped to do. That's what we've been doing. You know, we made pyramids out of dirt, out of sand, out of rock. We took what was there, making something out of nothing. And that's a skill set that is innate in us because we still do it, but we're not in control of it. You know, when we used to, back when I was a kid, we used to, in elementary school, cats used to flip over the metal trash cans and start beating on them. And then folks after a while would start rapping on it. So we had this music made out of nothing. That's yeah, it's that being a slave is an easy thing. It's a very easy thing compared to what freedom is, you know. So yeah, we're scared, we're frozen, we're lazy, knowing that lazy is a symptom and not a sickness. But we are at the point of laziness because of our sickness. It has paralyzed us and has us not believing in anything beyond what it is we're told, and don't even believe in that. So yeah, again, I go back to my answer. Yes, you need to learn to be African. I'm sorry. You know, if you can learn to do something and that's another part, the motivation. We'll study all kinds of bullshit material in their schools, stuff we'll never use again. How many times, War, have you spoken to anybody on a new job, an electrician or a plumber or whatever, and they're giving you a rundown of what they're doing, and when someone says something about like I went to electrician school or I went to a plumber school or whatever it is, and they tell you, okay, well, forget all that shit. I'm gonna tell you how it actually works. That's pretty much anything. You know, that's our participate and observation and participation. That's what we learn and grow. But we'll go to these schools and certifications and whatnot, and we'll get all of these degrees and so that we can be rewarded by the system of oppression with the bells and trinkets. So for me, if someone said, "Oh man, I gotta learn to be African," you sorry. I don't want you to learn anyway. Because if you can go and you learn that shit for them, to better their system so that you can get some trinkets and some bells and whistles, something shiny so you can dance for them. If you can do that, you can learn something that's already in you. Because when you start to understand, you start to see that you're not really learning to be an African. You're unlearning how to be white. You're unlearning how to be a slave. You're just being reminded of what it is to be free. You know, and if you can't see that somewhere, somehow, that learning to be what it is, God that everybody talks about, I believe in God, that God made you to be. If you can't understand that everything you've learned is forcing you to be other than what it is you were made to be, you know, if God don't make no accidents, you were made exactly how you're supposed to be. Your tendencies are what they are. Your hair is kinked up for a reason. You got broad lips for a reason. You got broad nose, brown skin for a reason. That was no accident. So it makes sense to me logically to figure out, well, why the hell do I have kinky hair? Why the hell do I have broad? Why is that? if I was made this way, it was for a purpose. What is that purpose? What do I need to well, I need to figure out why I was made this way, and then get on into your knowledge of self. That's it. But we come up with all kinds of fucking excuses. That's what really pissed me off over the years. It's not even the cats in the street. I get it. That's some trauma to have to go through, some real fucking trauma, from, and I haven't, but knowing Sight, knowing War, knowing other cats, I know that's some real fucked up trauma. So if you've not gone through that and you're merely pursuing a degree or, more money or blah, 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 that shit irritates the shit out of me. Because you're just sorry in my head. You're just sorry. You don't want to do it. And again, as I said earlier, I'm no longer in the business of trying to get motherfuckers who don't want to do it to do it. You don't want to sit down and eat your dinner? Fuck you. Go to bed. I don't care. I go back to sleep. That's the most polite way I can put it. I'm just over it.
Well, what Sally, basically what you're getting at, E, is if you're not going to force a slave to realize that they're a slave. And it's basically like someone going to school to get a degree to learn how to build a house so that they can get money and build a house for somebody else and then make money to then get someone to build a house for them. You see, they learn how to build a house. They get paid to be able to build a house, and then they pay somebody else to build that house for them.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean to them as it applies to being able to be self-sufficient? You went to school to learn how to basically be dumb. You went to school to learn how to make money, but to be able to make money basically remove you from the being able to make resources, make use of resources, which is what actually would free you, is the practice of being able to actually build a house, as opposed to going to school to learn real estate market or going how to play the economic game to get a house built from that standpoint, to create a community, so to speak, that is based on a tax bracket and a taxes being the revenue source or being the source of the power, which again goes right back into the system. So we basically continually not only pay for our enslavement, but we pay for it on credit. So we never get in a position to where we're able to earn our freedom because we're behind the curve. We're basically paying for the education we received, and then the money we make from that education we received, we're paying for a degree. We're using the money we make to pay off the debt that we owe for what we learned, which basically keeps us in that same cycle of enslavement, but never once get into a position of practicing what it is that I went to school for the sake of applying it to my own liberation and applying it to my own self-worth and my own value. That's a cold.
I think that's, and it just dawned on me, I think that's the essence for me. One of the buzzwords for folks, entrepreneurs and all of that now, which is just an excuse for them to do what the fuck they want to do. Because I do it for my babies. I'm trying to give them a better life. Bullshit. You want some pretty shit. You want some Chanel and all that. That's why you're doing. Don't give me that bullshit. I see through that. but the phrase, what is that? Generational wealth. I get it. It's a good idea. It all depends on what you define as wealth. But the reality of it is, the flip side of that is the generational debt. It's the new slavery. Even when we build generational wealth, there's a generational debt that goes along with it. Just from a country, the government, the big picture of what's going on. But we have become very good at creating generational debt. So we are not only living it up and paying somebody to do something we could do for ourselves, but we're condemning our children to having to repay that debt in some way. So yeah, it's the insidiousness of this shit. It's those who can't see it because they can't see it. You know, it's like the ego can't see the ego because of the ego. Its one job is to keep the truth hidden. Its one job is to keep you fixated and focused. Look here, I might have mentioned this on the show before. I forget who I was talking to, but that 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 idea of I think we did talk about it, of taking a picture, and how old folks used to talk about or societies as they came into being exposed to things like photographs and whatnot, didn't like it, didn't vibe with the idea of capturing your image in that moment, and related it to giving up a piece of your soul every time you're photographed. And I kind of get it. It's the same reason in some cultures, when somebody dies, they cover the mirrors in the house. You know, we are so, if you take a picture and look at it and set it down, you've now focused at least for a moment on you. And I'm assuming pictures of ourselves is what I'm talking about. But we've, at least for that moment, fixated our gaze and our focus and our consciousness on our own image. We've literally taken it to such a base level that in that moment, for whatever amount of time, we are focused on the least important thing about our reality, our ego, the way we see ourselves. One of the first things people do, a child of mine got her first passport, and I'm not, my baby, I'm not knocking her, but like everybody, I hate my passport picture. First thing we do is critique how we look in it. And now we're watching entire videos, movies, where we're fixated for 2 hours, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it is. We're fixated on that least important part of our reality, our image, another person's image. And so, having done that, we put ourselves in a position where our reality can be controlled by those who control the surface level. And that is just such a huge part of what it is we're missing. We're caught up in the ego. We're feeding the ego. And because of the ego, we can't even see that we're feeding the ego. I like how that works. That's funny. It's that loop. We can't see it because of it. That's some fucked up shit.
Let me say this.
Because of what's wrong. What's wrong is the facade. You know, it's the illusion. But we can't see that that's the problem because we're looking at the fucking illusion. Oh, that shit's hilarious.
So,
oh my God.
So, answer this question, because that goes into the perpetual cycle of our lack of self-consciousness. Is wealth the resource, or is the resource our wealth? Because now we're talking about definition. Let me say it again. Is wealth our resource, or is our resource the wealth?
Is the wealth our resource, or is the resource our wealth?
Or is resources our wealth? Is wealth
resources? But that's why I was confused. Because resources is what create wealth. Resources are the wealth. There's no wealth without control of resources. So our community is not wealthy because we have no resources. People, when they hear wealth, wealth is supposed to be separated from riches. When we think wealth, I think we're only thinking about money. But resources is what produce wealth. Matter of fact, the wealthier a person is, the less they actually see money. You know, money doesn't have as much value and it may still have value to people in the community. Don't get me wrong, and they may even still utilize money to move certain things in the environment. But the truly wealthy, they don't even deal with things from a money perspective. Money is not even the ideal. You know, money is just a medium of exchange. So wealth, truly the control of resources, is any community's wealth. Hell, back in the day, it's the reason why you had to bring a dowry when you wanted to marry somebody's daughter. You had to bring cows and things like that. It wasn't that a woman's value was limited to that of a cow, it was because one, you're taking a resource out of my household, another human being that's here that provides for labor here, and by you removing that resource out of my household, you have to trade something. So you brought a couple of cows and some goats or something to compensate me for taking one of the people in my household away. The second thing is by giving that down, you proved that you had the ability to take care of my daughter. So you had resources, which is what produced the wealth, which is why you was considered wealthy because of the resources that you had. So the wealth can't be the resource. The resources is what produced the wealth.
You just heard a lot of people. That's waking up the conscious. What you got to say to that, E? Because a lot of people
It,
thought the wealth was the resource.
it dawned on me a couple of years ago when she was still around. It's people in this world who never see money but have the best of every fucking thing. Like the Queen of England. She ain't never, other than, being a kid, oh, here's a quid, that type of bullshit. She's never had to balance a checkbook. She never had to buy shit on credit card. She never had to buy shit. She never had to go grocery shopping. She just said, I'm hungry. There's the food. That's fucking, that's the top. That's wealth. Having the resources somewhere, somehow, the control of them, the respect, the whatever, to have you in a position where you never have not even a concern, because that implies some type of worry on some level, but not even a thought about what money is and how it acts. That's the truly rich or truly wealthy motherfuckers right there. But we've been taught, and economics, there's a reason that they took, when I was in school, we took economics class, but I know they've gotten rid of a lot of that, and there's a message to that. There's a reason for that. But we have had, just like politics gets, when we talk to Black folks, politics, the almost the very first response is something in regards to voting. We think that politics and voting is politics. That's it. That's all that's all the politics that exists is just voting. Likewise, we think economics is money. That's it. That's all it is. And we've talked about it on the show before, that no, that's finances. We've been taught to conflate or to mistake finances for economics. Economics is essentially the management of resources. Mm-hmm. You again, taking what you have and somehow making it address what it is you need to get done. Do you need to get more stuff? Okay, I've got the map. Do I need more food? Okay, we only have 2 spears or 2 rifles to go hunting with. We got 18 people. Okay, I got to manage that. That's managing people are a resource. Managing the tools that you have, the weapons that you have to go hunting, to go tilling the soil. That's management of resources. So yes, those resources, of which money is one, and should be looked at as a resource and a tool, but not the economy. Money is not the economy. When people talk about people, up the ladder in government and business, when they talk about resources, they include labor. Labor is always a part of the conversation. If I want this money, what is it going to take? Labor. I got to have somebody. I got all the tools and stuff. I got all the materials, but I got to have labor to make that shit do anything. So people, in fact, in business, and I learned this in like 8th grade. Like I said, I was taking economics classes, and the professor, the teacher, told us that a company's biggest, when a company says that our greatest asset is our employees, almost inevitably. I I know War's been through enough jobs. I'm pretty sure Psych has heard those phrases where they go and they rally the people. They're trying to have a, let's hype the employees, improve morale type shit, and they'll say our employees are our greatest asset. All three of us have heard that phrase coming from corporate motherfuckers. If you look up, and this is what I got from my professor back in the day, if you look at the definition of an asset in terms of business, an asset is anything of value that is owned. If you don't own it, it's not yours. It's irrelevant to that part of the company. So anything that you own, anything that's an asset is something that you own, i.e. have control of. And a company will tell you that, and we take it as a, like, oh, we're included, or part of the team, or we're important to them. They really care. Not realizing they're low key letting you know they own you. They own your labor for whatever amount of time, wherever you are on the totem pole. They own that much of you. So the management of resources and not money is something that we have suffered from for so long. We don't realize that money is a tool. We think that money is the objective. Like that class you taught when you was on hiatus with the guys you ran into down there chilling in Jamaica with Tupac and the rest of them. And you told them that story about, why did you do the dirt? To get the money. But what did you do with the money? Oh, I spent it, gave it away. So then you got things. You got, what did you do with the things? Oh, gave them away or did something with them. Well, how did you make that? I mean, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm, the class I'm talking about. But the reality of it is cats were stealing just like cats were working jobs. And so that they could feel like men, get that sensation of having, accomplished and done and developed. My attitude when I first started working in construction, my walk changed. I was conscious of it, but when I come out of the construction site at the end of at 3:30 in the afternoon in August in Florida in the heat, and I'm walking out and sweat's just rolling down everywhere. It's sweat in places I didn't even know I had. I got a hammer drill in one hand and a bunch of other tools in the other hand, and I'm just dog tired. I felt manly. I felt like, rah, I've been put in a real day's work, not sitting in front of a computer, but I was out here sweating and making shit move. That felt manly. And that's what men are looking for. Women are looking for things that make them or cause them to be in their womanhood or their femininity or whatever. But so this idea that we're looking for the money, that the money is the goal, as opposed to that reality. I'm a man. You can't buy your way into manhood. I don't care how much money you make. Ask P. Diddy. Ask Epstein. Ask all of them that did that dirty shit. Trump and all of them. You have all of this money, but you're not men. But being this other thing, that's manhood. So we're looking for our womanhood. We're looking for our manhood. We're looking for, self-actualization in the pursuit of this money. In the pursuit of what it is somebody who's at the surface level control. Most of us don't even realize that the value of money since like 1971 has fallen by 99%, 98%. In other words, what you got for $1, or what you could buy for $1 today, you could have bought 98 times, 98% more. What is the analogy I'm looking for? I can't find it. What you bought then for $1 will cost you
basically what then would have cost you $1 costs you $2 right now.
Okay, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I couldn't solidify enough to find the mathematics.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And that's one of the things they teach in economics is that the true value of money is not what the number that's on the dollar bill. It's in what it can purchase. And we
Purchasing
constantly
power.
watch that dollar lose its purchasing power. We
Yeah.
watch it. You remember when gas used to be 99 cents a gallon. Now I'm dating you, E, when I say that.
I remember 89, 79, 69.
Exactly. Exactly. And some people never seen things like that. But the dollar hasn't changed, but its ability to purchase has,
Yeah,
with the society. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And see, but depending on the breed, a chicken still gonna lay an egg. My chicken's still gonna lay an egg every day. So damn what your dollar's worth. I can still make me an egg sandwich. I still got an egg, and damn it, that egg is still valued at an egg. You know what I'm saying? So my investment and management of the resources produces a steady income, so to speak. We can go into the feed and other things like that, da 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 da. But to keep it simple and to the point, that's what we're missing. We
That's the
think that those
that's the
those
value.
dollars, huh?
That's to say
Huh?
the value of the resource never changes. Whatever it takes to be able to be
Right.
self-sufficient, and whatever it takes to grow and be able to maintain my life, don't change with time. It's the same, but
And
it's that system of oppression and enslavement that will constantly grow in order to keep the person that is enslaved in a constant state of debt.
Yep.
and that's the to me the major benefit of managing resources as opposed to chasing the dollar. That's a pyramidal foundation. The reason the pyramids are still there is because the foundation was solid or is solid. And being able to manage the resources is a much more solid approach to reality than being able to move money around or to chase after dollars. Because you're always going to need to invest more of yourself to chase after more dollars as the dollar continues to lose value. But your children, your children's children, your children's children, all the way down. Once I figure out, if my babies were closer, once I figure out how to get a chicken to lay an egg consistently, I can teach that to my children because it's going to be the same thing. They're going to have to work 2 jobs to make the money I made on 1 job. But if they want eggs, all they got to do is the exact same thing. And then their children, all they got to do is the exact same thing. So managing those resources is foundational. It's pyramidal because it's that base, long term of being able to manage those resources, including money, not excluding it, but seeing it as a resource and not the resource or the wealth.
But just to kind of cap it off, when a society of people or when a person realizes that they're a slave and all of a sudden they're being cast out of the system that they depended on, which created that perpetual cycle of dependency, basically, and created them to be a tool of that system. And now all of a sudden they have to be in a position, if they want to survive, they have to be in a position of self-sufficiency. The first thing they have to do is redefine what it means to be what self it actually means, going into what he was saying. Because if I still carry the same definition of self-value that I had when I was a slave versus what I have now that I'm outcast out of that system or going out of that system, then I will never get anywhere. I'm gonna die. If I get outcast from that system, or if I recognize that I can no longer exist in that system, I can't use the same value structure that was impressioned upon me as a slave in order to create my liberation. My value system must change. There's no easy way about it. It must change. Like he's saying, it's either you remain a slave or you completely change your narrative and become a free person. There's no easy path to that. It's either one or the other.